Hi again, Mark here from talkingbass.net. This is the second in a short 3-part series on 4-finger picking. If you've not seen the first lesson, then I've linked to it in the info below, and I'd advise you to take a look at it because I'll be expanding on a bunch of concepts that I covered in that video. You want to have a basic knowledge of this free stroke technique and at least a little experience at playing with the thumb and the first finger. In this lesson, I'm going to be adding the middle finger, so we'll be playing with 3 fingers. If you want to download the sheet music and tab for everything in this lesson, just go on over to talkingbass.net by following the link in the info below. As well as the lesson material, remember to check out the other videos on the lesson map because there's over 100 lessons there covering every part of bass playing. And I do release a video lesson on YouTube every Friday, so subscribe if you want reminders about that. So last time we stuck to just using 2 fingers, which sounds like this. And that gives us a basic kind of foundation to work from, similar to playing with just 2 fingers in the traditional fingerpicking style. And to really get this technique to work for you, it's worth practicing anything that you would normally play with 2 fingers, like this, like this. That way you develop the calluses and the dexterity and the finger strength that you're going to need to move on to the other fingers. So now let's try playing with 3 fingers, and to do this we're going to add the middle finger into the mix. So I class that as finger number 2, so we have thumb, 1, 2, so it's these 3 fingers. Now with the standard traditional style of finger picking, if we were to play with 3 fingers like Billy Sheehan, Steve Bailey, Alex Webster, people like that, you would normally see them playing like this. So when we do that, we generally play 3, 2, 1. So ring, middle, index. That's the usual, more natural feeling way of playing like that. Okay. Some people do it differently. Some people might go 1, 2, 3 or 3, 2, 1, 2, and different variations on it. But generally it's going to be 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. It just feels more natural with the way that the fingers fall like that. Now with this kind of free stroke claw hammer style that we're using, we're going to be playing the opposite way around. Now when I first started trying this, I thought that can't be right, because I was used to playing with 3 fingers like this, in the Billy Sheehan kind of way. But it does feel much more natural to go the other way when we're playing like this. So we're going to be playing thumb, 1, 2, or thumb, index, middle. That's the ordering that we're going to be using. So that would give us this. Okay, so we're starting with the thumb, then we're playing with the index finger, and then the middle finger. Okay? So let's just start by getting used to that motion on a single note of D at the 5th fret of the A string. Okay, and it's going to be the same technique and hand positioning as we used in the last lesson. So the arms coming in at this angle here, arms meeting the body just probably above the bridge somewhere there. And if you don't have a ramp, which I'll talk about just in a minute, then make sure to be playing above the pickups because it'll make things a little bit easier. As you can see on this Enfield, I've got the pickup there, I'm working over the top of it. But these are very big pickups, so it kind of acts as a ramp, as I mentioned in the last lesson. So we're on that D there, so we're just going to play groups of 3, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and you want to accent with that first note, so that's going to be with the thumb. As I mentioned last time, the thumb is often a lot weaker than the other 2 fingers. Hopefully, if you've been practicing just with the 2-finger technique, you'll have built a bit of a callus there. Doesn't take long, you get a bit of a blister there, and then it'll start to toughen up. So you want to get a bit of a callus there, and you want to be getting used to that motion, building up the strength in that thumb. Because as I mentioned before, you'll start out with these 2 fingers being a lot stronger than the thumb. The action gives itself, as you're pulling in, gives these a little bit of an advantage. And also because there's no callus there, and because we're just not used to this kind of motion, the thumb often does feel weaker. So you want to try accenting a little bit more with the thumb to compensate, okay? So let's just try that very slowly. Okay, so thumb, 1, 2, or thumb, index, middle. So just starting slow with consistent triplets. And then you can just start to build up speed. Okay, so that's what you want to practice, just on that single note there until you get used to that rolling motion. Now, as I just mentioned, in the last lesson, I talked about the use of ramps in working on this technique. And it wasn't so important with just 2 fingers, but when we add a 3rd finger into the mix, a ramp can be really useful. Now, just as a refresher, a ramp is a piece of wood fitted on the body of the bass under the strings, so the fingers have a surface to drop on after or before picking. And this stops any unnecessary digging in or dropping down and gives us a nice even attack and an anchor. As before, this Enfield line-out bass has these huge super quad pickups and it gives us a huge surface to work over, unlike basses fitted with standard precision or jazz bass pickups. So I can get away with not having a ramp. If I was to use my Fender Jazz or Fender Precision and I wanted to really use this technique, then I'd probably look to get a ramp installed. If you don't have a ramp, then just try plucking over the pickups as much as you can. And if you want to try out a ramp without messing around cutting out pieces of wood, then just get some rubber or a mouse mat or any of that kind of material and try cutting it out to shape, and then just with double-sided sticky tape, something like that, just putting it under the strings between the pickups. And if it's not thick enough, just layer it up, cut out a piece of mouse mat. If it's too thin, get another piece, put that on top, stick that to it, just put it under, and try getting it to the same height as the pickups. That's usually the optimum kind of height. And then just try out this technique. And you might find that, yep, you really want to have a ramp. Then you can go away, get a piece of wood, cut it out, or get somebody else to cut it out for you. If you get a luthier doing it, they might be able to do it to the radius of the neck, things like that. Well, that works really, really well. And then, you can go out, do that, and then get something a little bit more permanent. But, if you just want to try it out, just get any old material, any rubber, anything like that, cut it out to shape and put it under there. Okay, let's try integrating some repeated single notes into a bass line using this technique. Now, we're going to just use a simple riff that sounds like this. Okay, so that's the riff, and the rhythmic pattern that we're going to use using this technique is going to be like this. Okay, so we've got this diddle-da-da, diddle-da-da. So that's going to be, let's practice that first. So if you take an A there, 5th fret of the E string, we're going to use thumb, 1st finger, 2nd finger, and then come back to the thumb. So we have, okay, that's the rhythm, but we just need to build up speed. So, that's what you want to work on, just that diddle-da, diddle-da. So let's have a look at this riff. Now, if you want to follow along with the tab or the sheet music, just follow the link in the info below, and that'll take you to talkingbass.net, where you'll have a little view PDF link, and you can just follow along to your heart's content, okay? So this riff's in A minor, and we begin with the first phrase that sounds like this. Okay, so that's the first phrase, slow. Okay, so as I say, it's in A minor, and we start on the A, 5th fret of the E string, and we have thumb 1, 2 for this little flurry. And then we land on the C, 3rd fret of the A string, and we play that with the thumb. So that's that little flurry rhythm that I was talking about before. So we have, and that's the move that you want to get used to. So, you just want to get used to that move. Then the rest of that phrase is quite straightforward, and we just use one thumb and 1st finger for the rest of it. So we have, so we move up to the D, 5th fret of the A string, and then back to the C, 3rd fret. Then we have D to D sharp, little slide there, kind of a grace note. Then D, C, 5th fret, 3rd fret. Okay, so all together. for the rest of those, like I say, it's just thumb and first finger alternating in any way that you want. So. Okay. The second phrase is similar to the first one in that we have that little flurry, and that's going to be on the A, 5th fret of the E string again, but this time we're going to be landing on the G, the 3rd fret of the E string. So we have this, and then back to the A. So that's it fast, and then slow. So thumb, 1, 2, thumb. And when we get back to the A, we're plucking that with the first finger. So just start it slow, and then just build up speed. Once you've mastered that little flurry, then we have a ghost note, and then we have this little lead back up to the A from the F sharp. So that sounds like this. So each time we're alternating with a ghost note. So we've got the flurry, then we play a ghost note, and we're plucking that with the thumb. Then we have F sharp, ghost note, G, ghost note, G sharp. Okay? Okay, so in between each one we have a ghost note. So very slowly. Okay, and as I mentioned before, if you read along with the tab for this and the sheet music, you'll see those little ghost notes in there. So let's build up a bit of speed on that. Okay, now let's try putting those two riffs together. So we'll start fairly slowly and then build up speed. So 2, 3, 4. Okay, now let's try it full speed. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This riff is actually built from 4 phrases. We've got the first 2 phrases we've just learned, then the third phrase is a repeat of that first phrase. And then we have a final phrase, which is kind of like a fill, which sounds like this. So let's have a look at that 4th phrase. So again, we start with the little flurry. And we're going to be starting at the A there, at the 7th fret of the D string. And then down to the G, the 5th fret of the D string. So again, it's that little flurry. And we're playing the G there with the thumb. So you want to just practice that move in isolation. If you have any problems, don't worry about getting the rest of the riff off. If you're, having problems with that, just isolate the problem. If you just have to keep practicing that little phrase there, just keep practicing that. So we've got, then we come down on the E and the D, 7th fret and 5th fret of the A string. And the rest of this is all done first and thumb and first finger again. Then we've got, little ghost notes again. So we've got a hammer on from the C to the D, so 3rd fret to the 5th fret. Then back to the C, 3rd fret. And then we finish with the 4th fret, the G sharp there on the E string. So. So that's the whole of that phrase. Okay? So that's the whole riff, and you want to practice playing that slowly and then just building up speed. And once you're up to speed, it should sound like this. 2, 3, 4. Now, in that riff, we kind of stuck to those flurries on a single string and we didn't really move around very much. Now, if you want to get used to moving around across strings a little more with this technique, then we could just take a simple shape like a root fifth octave pattern. So let's say C, 3rd fret of the A string, G, 5th fret of the D string, and then C, 5th fret of the G string. So C, G, C. Simple shape like that, and then just play triplets across it. So just playing 3 notes on each string, which would sound like this. Okay, so that very simple exercise, and then just build up speed with it. Okay, and then you know, just build up speed and just keep going round and round. Once you've mastered crossing the strings in that way, you can start putting those kind of flurries into bass lines and fills, and you can get things that sound like this. So far, we've only looked at repeated notes with this technique, and it becomes a lot more difficult if we start looking at individual notes per finger. So let's say playing a line or a scale like this. You know, there's no repeated notes in there. And that's a lot more difficult because we have to think about the coordination between the fingers on both hands. Now, for this exercise, there's a few parts to this exercise, but we're going to use a scale, and we're going to use an E harmonic minor scale. Now, you might be thinking, why are you using an E harmonic minor scale? But it works really well for this because we've got 3 notes per string on the first 2 lines, which works out really well for this. And then at the top we've got a little turnaround, which you'll see that is very similar to things that you might get in other tunes. So there is a method behind the madness here. So first of all, let's have a look at the scale. So this scale we're going to play up here at the octave. We're going to play E there, 7th fret of the A string, and then I'll just work up through the notes first. We have E, F sharp, G, then A, B, C, and then we have the D sharp and the E up at the top. Okay, so we'll just play up and down that. Okay, so in terms of the frets, on the A string we have 7, 9, 10, and then on the D string we have 7, 9, 10, and then at the top we have 8 and 9. Okay, so you just want to work up and down that scale until you've got that finger in under your fingers. So the first exercise, we're just going to work up to the 5th of the scale. And we're going to use a little triplet for the first line. So that's going to sound like this. Okay, so that's the line we're going to play. So we begin with the first 3 notes, so E, F sharp, G, thumb 1, 2, and that's the little triplet. Then we have the A and the B, and then we just come back down the scale. But instead of playing the E when we come back down, we jump down to the 7th, which is the 6th fret of the A string, and then back, okay? So, through the notes, E, F sharp, G, A, B, A, G, F sharp, D sharp, E. And if you're having any problems following along with that, remember that it's all in the lesson material that you can download following the link below. Okay, so start slow. And it can seem a little bit odd at slow tempos trying to get used to that triplet, but you'll get used to it. Just follow along with me. A little bit quicker. As you can see, I'm using the 3-finger technique for the first flurry, and the rest of it is all just thumb and first finger. Okay. Bit quicker. And you can see that this is where this technique really comes into its own, because if you were to try playing that with 2 fingers, it's possible, but you've really got to it's quite tough. But with this technique, you're only playing each of those fingers once. You know, The fingers are hardly moving, but you just have to get the coordination. So that's the first exercise. For the second exercise, we're just going to work up and down the complete scale with 2 triplets at the start, and it's going to sound like this. Okay? So you should have that pattern under your fingers already, you know, the scale up and down. So all we have to do is look at those 2 triplets. So we're playing thumb 1, 2 on each string. So. And this is where the heel of the hand can come in quite handy for muting the E string when we're moving up. So as I play, I'm actually moving the hand down slightly so that I can catch the E string so that it doesn't give out any residual noise. So just start slowly, just with those 2 strings. And just build up speed with those. At first, you'll probably find that the fingers are just uncoordinated. You know, you won't be able to get them together. And if you start trying too fast too early, it'll just get sloppy. So be careful of that. So just start slow and really accent the thumb as well. That can sometimes help. Just build up speed. Okay. Then, once you get to the top, we just play all thumb and first finger from that point on. And as before, those first 2 notes, the first 2 lines were triplets, so then we're back into standard 8th notes. So just pay attention to the rhythm there. Ba-ba-da, ba-ba-da, bum, 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 bum. Okay? Okay. For the next exercise, we're going to add another triplet in there. So we're going to be working up and down the scale again, and but this time we're going to be playing with the 3-finger technique on that little turnaround up at the top and the D sharp and the E. So that's going to sound like this. Bit faster. Okay, so that's the line. So I don't really need to explain much in this, it's just that same scale up and down, but with the triplets there. So thumb 1, 2, thumb 1, 2, thumb 1, 2, and then it's thumb 1, thumb 1, thumb 1, you know, all the way back down. And just as on the first exercise, when we come back down, we miss out the E, the root note on the way down, skip it to go to the 7th there, the 6th fret of the A string, and then back, so. And that brings it back round in time, okay? Again, don't rush it. Start slow and just gradually build up speed. And you could play all of this with hammer-ons and pull-offs or with standard finger-picking technique, but you'll notice that it gives you a bit of a different sound, especially up at the top. If you were to play up through that, you know, normally if you were using a standard hammer-on pull-off kind of thing, it's a lot more fluid, a lot more legato, and which might be great, you know, if you're playing a sax line or something like that and you're trying to get that kind of fluidity. But this technique gives us a bit more snap to it. So it depends on what you're going for. If you want a real fluid kind of legato sound, then obviously you're going to go for the hammer-on and pull-off. But you know, that gives us that snappy kind of sound. And you'll hear that on things like Donna Lee. If you listen to Jaco Pastorius' version of Donna Lee, instead of having a really kind of fluid sound at the beginning, he plays it with both fingers instead of legato, and it gives it that kind of snap. And it's the kind of thing that, you know, when you first try playing Donna Lee, Jaco's version, that's the kind of thing that really throws you when you first try playing it, because you've really got to dig in with the fingers. With this technique, with the 3-finger technique, you can easily get that snap. Okay, so Oops. That's the next exercise. For the final exercise on that scale, we just add another triplet. So we're coming up, and then when we come back down onto the D string, we've got another triplet with the flurry. And then we go back to thumb and first finger for the end. Okay, so when we played that last part, we come down on the G, F sharp, E, D sharp, and back to the E, okay? So that's just to get enough notes to bring it round. So that's the whole line. You can hear that change in the triplet to eighth note thing again. Dabba da dabba da dabba da dabba da bum 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 bum. Okay? Okay? Okay. Once you've practiced those lines for a while, it's a lot easier to try putting this kind of technique into your fills and runs. So first of all, let's have a look at a couple of basic little runs. This first one sounds like this. Okay, so this is over a kind of E7 kind of vibe, so it's E blues, E Mixolydian, E Dorian kind of thing. A little chromatic run in there as well, and some harmonics. So let's just work through that. So we begin with C sharp, D, C sharp, 4th fret, 5th fret, 4th fret on the A string, and we're playing this thumb 1, 2 in the picking hand. And then we come down onto the B, 7th fret of the E string, and we're playing that with the thumb. So that's it fast, slowly. And that's our little turnaround that we used at the beginning of Donna Lee. Oops. Now, after we've done the little turnaround, we come back up, C sharp, D, E, so 4th fret, 5th, 7th fret on the A string. And that's just using the thumb and first finger. And you should finish on the first finger there. Then we move up onto the D string and play 4th, 5th and 6th frets. So that's F sharp, G natural, G sharp. So that's where we get that little bluesy feel coming in. And then that sets us up perfectly for coming back down onto the E, 7th fret of the A string with the thumb. And then we get to play some harmonics. And those harmonics, I've put those in there so that you get to see how easy it is to go between this kind of playing and harmonics. Whereas when you're finger picking, it's a little bit, I mean, it's not hard at all, but it really suits this kind of playing. It's much easier to put them in, especially these kind of double stop things. So we've come up on the F sharp, G, G sharp, thumb 1, 2, down to the E, and then the harmonics are at the 5th fret of the D and G string. And it gives it a kind of, you know, a kind of Hendrixy kind of 7 sharp 9 kind of thing. Okay, so that's that fill. The next feel is a kind of Dorian bluesy kind of thing, and it sounds like this. Okay. So we begin up here at the A, 12th fret of the A string, and we just kind of do a little bluesy run up, and I'll tell you the frets first. So we've got 12, 13, 14 on the A string, and then 12, 13, 14 on the D string. So we have A, A sharp, B, D, D sharp, E. And they're both little triplets played thumb 1, 2 in the picking hand. So that's really well suited to this technique, you know, playing those 3 notes per string. Then when we get to the top, we play the G, 12th fret of the G string. And then we come back down to the E, 14th fret of the D string. Okay. So that's the first part. Then we come down to that little turnaround again. So we're going to have C sharp to D, and then back down to the B. So this is the same little turnaround that we played down here, but up here. So, and then, oops. Okay, so then we just come down. we just come down, kind of a Dorian kind of thing. Once we get to the B, we come down to the A, 12th fret of the A string, then the G, 10th fret of the A string, then the E, 12th fret of the E string, and then finally the D, 10th fret of the E string. So. And. Okay, so this gets you used to playing those little, oops, those little turnarounds, and you'll gradually get used to the muscle memory of kind of going thumb, 1, 2. You know, you'll get used to that move, and once you've got used to that and the muscle memory's been built up, you'll be able to go as fast as you want with it, and you'll be able to put it in wherever, you know, and whatever you're playing. Okay, so one more time through the fill. Okay. Now, lastly, let's have a look at how we can apply this technique to octave patterns. Now, there's a real obvious way that we can apply it to octave patterns, just by using the thumb and first finger. You know, because the hand sits there quite nicely, we don't have to do much jumping like we do with traditional finger picking, where you've got to skip strings and things. You know, it just sits there really, really nicely. And if we were to move on to those kind of disco octaves, with the repeated notes on the top, again, you know, it's quite simple with that technique. I actually find it a lot easier to do that particular one with traditional finger picking, just because I've done it so many times. But if you want to get into doing little kind of flurries and kind of little snaps in there with the octaves, there are a couple of little things that you can do. Now, one of them is to do what we just did there with the repeated octave, and then just come straight back down onto the bottom root note. So we get that kind of effect, which gives us this nice little flurry. So we have just a standard octave, so that's a D, so thumb, then 1 and 2 up on the top, and then back down to the thumb for the bottom. So okay, so you get that nice little flurry effect. So just start that slow. Just thumb 1 2 thumb, thumb 1 2 thumb, and just build up speed. And you'll find when you build up speed, it goes from being a case of thinking about every individual note to just being a kind of roll effect with the hand. At some point, that kind of takes over. You know, diddly-da, rather than thinking, you know, when you play it slowly, you know, you're thinking of each individual note like that, but as you build up speed, the kind of motion changes a little bit. So just keep practicing until you can get that rolling action. Okay? So let's just try one last riff that uses that little octave flurry. So the riff's going to sound like this. So the riff starts with the D, 5th fret of the A string, and I'm fretting that with the pinky, the 4th finger. And I'm going to pluck that with the first finger of the picking hand. Now normally I'd start with the thumb, but this time I'm starting with the first finger so that we can do the little percussive mute afterwards. Okay, so we've got D, then I bring the palm of the hand and the thumb down onto the strings, just like that, just to give us that percussive kind of slap sound. And that's on beat 2, on the back beat, so we get that kind of sound, okay? So, once we've played that, we then play a ghost note followed by the C at the 3rd fret of the A string. So, and it's a very quick little ghost note there, it's a little 16th note. So we've got, so you can barely hear the ghost note. It's in there, but you don't hear it that much. Then I hammer on with the fourth finger again back to the D, okay? So you can just get used to going round and round with that and just get used to bringing that palm down on the backbeat, okay? Now, the second part of the riff, we just play the B to the C, so second fret to the third fret on the A string. So we had, so there's the B to the C. And I'm playing that first finger, then thumb, so. Then we've got another palm slap down for the backbeat, so. Okay, and then finally we have the little run back up to start us off, and this is where the little octave flurry comes in. So we have, so we've got the little flurry, so we've got that on a C octave. So we've got C, then up at the octave, 1 and 2, so thumb, 1, 2, and then back down to the octave. So C, lower octave, C, upper octave, 2 notes, and then C, lower octave with the thumb. And if you've been practicing the exercise before, then that should be okay. And then we have a C sharp to lead us back up to the D. So that's C sharp, 4th fret of the A string. So, all in all, we have okay, so that's a few applications of this 3-finger technique using that free stroke method. After playing with this for quite a while, you'll probably move into 4 fingers quite naturally, and that's what I'll be covering in the next lesson. So, I'll see you there.